Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I hope that all of you are doing well. I am Dominik Blattner, the ITTF High Performance Manager, and I'm very happy and proud to warmly welcome all of you to our 19th ITTF High Performance and Development webinar with the topics Biomechanics in Table Tennis. I want to talk shortly about Q&A issue in this webinar, the webinar code. So we would like, or please leave all your questions in the Q&A section. We will try to answer as many as possible in the question and answer part of the webinar. So thank you very much for taking care of this. And now it's time for the introduction of our guest for today. And I would like to warmly welcome Ivan Malagoli Lanzoni from Italy. He has a PhD in exercise and sport science. He's an adjunct professor at the Bologna University in Italy, lecturing theory and methodology of training, racket sports, etc. His research fields are performance analysis in table tennis with topics kinematic and match analysis. And as mentioned before, he's a lecturer, but also in different areas of sports studies at various universities in Italy, Bologna, Rimini, Rome, as well as in other countries like China, Croatia, Kosovo, and Malta. And last but not least, he is also a table tennis coach in Italy. He has the third level coaching license and is also a lecturer for the Italian Table Tennis Federation. Below you can also find his ResearchGate profile and literature list if you are interested in. So Ivan, thank you very much for taking the time. It's great to hear and see you. And last but not least, I warmly welcome our ITTF High Performance Elite Coach Massimo Constantini. So pass over to you, Max.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and welcome again to all of you, all the participants, to this great appointment with the knowledge, I would say, or rendezvous with the knowledge. Our journey regarding the performance and all the things behind keep going. So today we have the great opportunity to have a great person, a great friend, a table tennis player, a research man, and Ivan is a great professor, and he will explain us what is the importance of the biomechanics in table tennis. So we know all the let's say the connection in the motion, in the movement, shots, and footwork, and so on. So today Ivan will give us a full, comprehensive, let's say, presentation in regarding the biomechanics in table tennis. So I'm really eager to hear Ivan. And for now, I will pass back to Dominic. Over to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, Massimo. I totally agree with your words. And we, the ITTF High Performance and Development team, want to cover all the different fields in sports. So we decided to have this time biomechanics on our agenda. It's very great to hear today a lot of things related to biomechanics, which is an interdisciplinary science that describes analysis and assesses human motion. It combines the knowledge of physics, chemistry, mathematics, physiology, and anatomy. We are very much looking forward what Mr. Malagoli Lanzoni will tell us about this quite complex and interesting science. So the floor is yours, Mr. Malagoli, Ivan.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here today. First of all, I would thank you, the organizers, Dominic, Massimo, Dora, and Polona, for inviting me to this presentation today. As you can see from my first slide, the title of this presentation is Biomechanics in Table Tennis. We can start. First of all, the first slide is about the outline, the agenda of my presentation. I would start with the general definition because I hope that in the audience there are many experts in the field of table tennis, players, trainers, coaches, but I think that it is important to start with general definitions about the meaning of biomechanics and kinematics. The second point of my webinar today is a revision of the table tennis literature about biomechanics. As a researcher, as a PhD in sports science, I think that it is really important to show you the most important scientific methodology, the most important methods applied to biomechanics in table tennis. The third point of my presentation today is linked about a table tennis example. What I mean that I am going to show you many articles about the main topic of this webinar, biomechanics, just to show you the power of biomechanics applied to table tennis. The point number 4 is about table tennis example, news, because every week, every month, there are new publications, scientific publications about this topic, and it's really important for me to show you last experiments, last measurements, in order to provide you useful information for the field, for the practice. And in the end, I'm going to show you a very important list of conclusions, and I hope that in the end of this presentation, the audience should give me a lot of information, lots of useful suggestions for the future. Then we can move on, and I used to joke about this slide because on the left side of the picture you can see 2 rackets and the ball, the net, the table, and it represents the field of practical knowledges and table tennis. On the right side you can see a picture about science. I have to tell you, to be honest, that it's not really easy to create a link, to create a bridge between the two fields. What I mean that it's not really easy to provide useful information, starting with science, with psychology, physiology, match analysis, biomechanics, to give useful information from a practical perspective. What I used to do is to suggest that if we are able to work together, to cooperate, we can have a good result, better than we think. 1 + 1, the result should be 3. The first part of my presentation today is linked with the definitions of the main important words. In the literature, biomechanics, we can divide this word in 2 parts. Bio indicates that biomechanics has something to do with living or biological systems. And the second part of the word is mechanics, indicates that biomechanics has something to do with the analysis of forces and their effect. Kinematic is simply a branch of classical mechanics with statics and dynamics that describes the motion of points, bodies and system of bodies, not considering the forces that caused the motion. It is often referred to as the geometry of motion. In the end, the definition of biomechanics is the study of forces and their effects on living systems. But we are here today to speak about exercise and sport biomechanics, especially applied to table tennis. The main aims of exercise and sport biomechanics are directly linked with the performance improvement, many studies about technique, equipment, and training. At the other side, a very important aims of exercise and sport biomechanics, the injury prevention and rehabilitation, also connected with the technique, equipment, and training, with the main aim to reduce. I would start my presentation today with the second point, the second part, with the revision or the review of the literature. As already you know that I am a PhD, a researcher, a scientist in the field of table tennis science, and it is really important for me to underline that the methodology, the scientific methodology, is really important to review the literature, and especially in sports science. First of all, today I find 57 studies about table tennis kinematics. I mean scientific articles, book chapters, etc. As you can see from the first line of this slide, in 2018 I found 49 articles. Today, 57. This number is a very limited number. On one hand, it is possible to consider it a criticism in table tennis. On the other side, it is a good opportunity. It shows that we can continue with we can create a lot of different studies on our sport. It is a limited number, especially compared to other racket sports: tennis, badminton, squash, paddle tennis. The first publications, they started to produce papers in 1979. Lorz is the name of the first author, Muster in 1986, Kudet in 1988. It is important on a methodological point of view to remember that all the studies about biomechanics in table tennis are connected with a laboratory setup. It means that we don't have information about real competition. I think that it is really important to remember this aspect, especially to coaches, trainers, and players, because maybe in the future it would be very interesting to create new experiment during real competition, during the most important tournament. All the articles we are going to see, they present different aims, variables, and methods. I would like to start with a literature revision, showing that the most important shot analyzed in the literature is the topspin. As a table tennis coach, I know that it is a very important shot, maybe the most important shot. We don't have to underestimate the service, the best way to return services, but I would show you that 55% of the articles about biomechanics in table tennis are linked with the analysis of the motion about the most important shot, topspin, followed by drive. As you already know, maybe drive is a very important shot without spin. Maybe, I'm not sure about it, but I think that it is the main reason why drive is a very important shot in literature, because we don't have to analyze the spin of the ball. That we are going to see that it is a very critical point of the analysis. We can move on. What about the shot? Distinguishing in forehand and backhand shot, the most important strokes analyzed in the literature are forehand shot, the 68%. 23% of the literature is based on the comparison between forehand and backhand shot, and just the 9% are linked with the backhand strokes. As you can see in this slide, the subjects involved during the experiments in the laboratories are, for the majority, male expert athletes with the 73% of the literature. Then you can see there are a 14% of expert compared with beginners, female expert athletes. 4% of the articles are based on the comparison between male and female athletes, and etc. On a methodological point of view, it's quite curious that the protocols are referred many times to the upper body, to the study of the movement of the upper part of the body of the athlete. It is the 63% of the references. The 26% study the total body, just the 7% the arm, and 4% are the articles prefer the lower body. I am a table tennis coach, and I know that there are two most important technical aspects in our sport: the movement of the arm, the movement of the upper body. But I think that the lower body, the study of the footwork technique and the legs, is underestimated, especially in the literature about table tennis biomechanics. On the right side of this slide, you can see a laboratory setup. It's a table with 8 cameras, high-speed cameras for the motion capture all around the table. And as you can see in this picture, on the left side, on the top of the table, there is a target. What is the meaning of the target? I am a PhD, means that on a scientific point of view, it is better to create a standardization during the experiment, during the protocols. And I have to show you that 63% of the articles, they have never taken into account a target on the table. And I think that it is a negative point of view, because we need to produce article with a standardization, with a standard. And it is really important, in order to do it, to put a target on the table. For the same reason, I think it is not just my opinion, but it is referred to a scientific methodology. It is very important to include in the protocols a robot machine in order to have the same standardization. If we would like to repeat the same experiment after 1 year, we need to use a robot to set up the robot with a spin, with a quantity of spin, with a quantity of speed, in order to repeat the same protocols. As you can see, it is a little more 50-50%. 50% of the literature without a robot, and 50% with a robot. I think that it is another criticism in the literature. We can move to the next slide. In the most important papers, we can find information about racket motion. More or less the 70% of the articles, the published articles, included information about racket motion. And I think that it is really useful and really important. On the other side, 61% of the manuscripts have never included information, variables about the ball. The data is 61% of the papers without information about the ball. I think it is my opinion that it is quite normal, quite obvious, because the speed of the ball is very high, the spin of the ball is very high, and it is not really easy on a methodological point of view to collect information, to collect data about the ball during the game. And I think that in the future, it will be very important to imagine new researches, new studies involving information about. Another very important criticism is the information about the impact between the ball and the racket. As you can imagine, the duration of the impact between the ball and the racket is very minimum. It is really fast. And as you can see in this slide, 80% of the papers included information about this moment. But I have to tell you, to be honest, that most part of the articles included information about this specific moment during the impact. But they never explained very well how the authors detected this specific moment during the movement. And it is a criticism. I think that it is another opportunity in the future. What about the instrument? When we speak about biomechanics in sport in general, there are many options, a lot of instruments that we can use to collect the data. First of all, we can consider cameras. When I write cameras, I mean high-speed cameras with high frequency, that we can collect data with a very high frequency of capture. We can use EMG. It is an electromyography system. It is a tools and instrument useful to detect the activation of the muscles during the sport movement, during the shots in table tennis. We can also use force platforms. They are instruments that we can put on the floor in order to measure forces on the floor during the movement. And in the end, a new instrument, they are called insole plantar pressure measurement instruments that we can put into the shoes during the footwork technique in order to evaluate forces during the steps. We are moving on, and I would show you that it's really important to use cameras. We can call it a stereophotogrammetric system with high speed of capturing, 200 Hertz, 250 Hertz, 100 Hertz, and 500 Hertz. I have to tell you, to be honest, that these cameras are very expensive, and it's not easy to find it all around the world. You need to stay in a laboratory connected with the university. Then we arrive at the third point of my presentation. I would show you many table tennis examples. I found many articles, and this is the main body of my presentation. First of all, the first examples that I would like to show you are really linked with injury prevention, with the use on insole plantar pressure measurement or electromyography. It means that I am going to show you two very simple examples. The first one is about an article from the European Journal of Sport Science, published 2 years ago in 2018, from other colleagues of mine from China and Australia. The main aim of this study was to examine the ground reaction forces, knee and ankle moments, and in-shoe plantar pressure distribution during forehand topspin with 3 typical table tennis specific footwork. As you can see on the right side, there are 3 very colored pictures, and it is the explanation of the forces inside the shoes during 3 different typical footwork technique using table. The first one on the top is the one step, is the footwork technique especially used to move 1 foot in front of the table in the direction on the net, especially to return services. It is not a very dynamic footwork technique, but it is really linked with service return. The second picture in the middle is linked with the side step, a footwork movement, a lateral movement in front of the table. And the third picture is about the cross step, the more dynamic footwork technique used to cover a very long distance in a very dynamic way during the game. The subjects involved in these studies were 15 male players, and the authors use an insole plantar pressure measurement system. At the end of the study, we can see the result at the conclusion. As compared to one step, significant higher maximum ground reaction forces, maximum joint angles and moments, and peak plantar pressure were found during forehand topspin in the side and cross step. As you can imagine, the most two dynamic footwork technique, the side step and the cross step, showed the highest level of forces into the shoe. But the take-home message, the suggestion by the author, is that the high plantar loading in the forefoot and medial midfoot regions observed inside the cross step suggests that footwear and foot orthosis design should consider the strong emphasis of this area. In the end, the author suggested that due to the data collected in this article, in this experiment, they suggested to produce specific shoes in order to prepare specific and to design specific footwear for our sport in order to prevent injuries. And this is the first example about applied biomechanics to table tennis. The second article that I am going to show you today is about sport biomechanics. It has been published in 2019 from other authors from France, And the main aim of this paper was to compare the muscle activity of 8 lower limb muscles across typical table tennis strokes. Authors assumed that as decisive strokes, the topspin and smash would be associated with a higher level of muscle activity, and activity level of each muscle depend on the characteristic of the shot. On the right side, you can see the list of the shots analyzed during this protocol. The subjects were 14 male expert players, and as you can see in the protocol, there is a very long list of different muscles of the lower body, and soleus, gastrocnemius, medialis, biceps femoris, etc. And the authors used an ENG, an electromyography system, in order to detect the activation of the most involved muscles in the movement. The results, authors found that both hip extensors and plantar flexors were strongly activated during decisive strokes. Forehand smash and top exhibited higher levels of activity than other shots. The take-home message of this article is that using this kind of electromyography system, we can detect the most activated muscles during the different shots. It helps, it should be useful to plan specific training session for the trainers, but especially for the fitness trainer, for the conditioning training, for personal trainers. And in the future, it could be really important to compare the muscle activated during the game phases, comparing female and male athletes, with the main aim to plan different training sessions, and with another main aims that is to prevent injuries. We can move on with the second part of the examples, because the first part, as you can see before, is mainly connected with injury prevention. There is another part of biomechanics applied to exercise and sport science with the aim of improving the performance. I will show you 3 articles. The first one is about the forehand shot. The authors tried to divide the forehand topspin in 3 different phases, and they compared the 3 different phases. The second article is about the rotational torsional movement of the pelvis, and the third one and last one is about the comparison between 2 different topspin forehand, along the line and cross-cart respectively. I think that I'm going to show you the 3 articles because there is a very strong link, and in the end we can have a lot of good suggestion on a practical point of view for the coaches and for the trainers. The first article is a novel phase-aligned analysis on motion patterns of table tennis strokes from other colleagues of mine from Singapore and England. It has been published in 2016 on the International Journal of Performance Analysis in Sport. And the main aim of this study was to compare an analysis for identifying the phases of a forehand table tennis stroke, which is based only on the velocity of the racket motion center. It is really important to underline this point of view. They try to analyze the velocity of the racket. An experimental investigation, part of this paper, and including a number of players of 2 different levels, was conducted as an example implementation of this investigation. As you can see in this picture, the subjects were 10 expert athletes and 10 novices, 10 beginners. The authors used 8 high-speed cameras to collect the data with a frequency of 100 Hz. And they try to divide the forehand topspin in different phases. As you can see at the beginning of the shot, it is called ready position. means the velocity of the racket is near zero. There is a peak of velocity of the racket, of the center of the racket, during the backswing phase when the players prepare the shot. Then at the end of the preparation of the shot, the velocity is already near zero. The peak of velocity is during the forward swing phase, and the most important articles defined this point near the impact between the racket and the ball. And in the end, at the end of the movement, T4 is the point, the velocity is near zero because it is at the end of the topspin. We can move to the results, the most important and interesting result of this research. On the left side, you can see that the authors try to analyze the maximum velocity of the racket. I have to underline that this data is referred to the maximum velocity of the bat. And as you can see, there is a very significant difference between the two group athletes taken into account. The velocity is very high for the expert compared to the beginner. And it is a very important result from a practical point of view. We can consider it a very important variables that distinguishing high-level players and beginners. On the right side, we can have a confirmation of the same result, but not refer to the maximum velocity, but referred to the three different phases. It shows that the velocity of the racket is always higher for expert athletes compared to novices during the three different phases of the shots. In conclusion, this method applies a novel way to identify phases using max and min speed rather than maximum displacement as commonly used by researchers and others. This study confirms that there is an opportunity to improve novices' performance through coaching to move them towards the characteristic of high-level players. The first study that I show you before today, this study, the take-home message of this study is that it's really important to distinguish on a biomechanical point of view, high-level players to beginners is the velocity, the speed of the racket. Then we can move to the second example. It is from the Journal of Sport Sciences from a very famous authors from Japan about biomechanics and kinematics in table tennis. And the aim of this paper was to determine the hip joint kinetics during the topspin forehand and to investigate the relationship between the relevant kinematic variables examined and the racket horizontal and vertical velocity. What I mean that this article aims to analyze which are the most important variables during the movement of the body playing a forehand topspin and the connection between the velocity of. The subject involved in this research were 18 male advanced players. The author included 8 cameras with the speed of 200 Hz for the captures of the images. And he asked the players to perform cross-card topspin in the corner. In the end, results are really interesting on a practical point of view because the peak pelvis axial rotation velocity and the work done by the playing side hip pelvis axial rotation torque were positively related to the racket horizontal velocity and I think that it is the link with the previous studies because the previous study shows that the velocity of the racket is a very important characteristic of the high-level players. And this study shows that there is a very strong connection between the velocity of the racket and the torsional, rotational movement of the pelvis during the execution of this very important shot. And I think that it is very important because there is a connection between the two examples. It is the reason why me and other colleagues of mine from Italy we prepared this paper, we published this paper on the Journal of Sports Science 2 years ago. The title is a kinematic comparison between long line and cross-cart topspin forehand in competitive table tennis players. I prepared this paper because as a table tennis coach, in the practice, in the gym, I used to plan different training sessions involving the two techniques, the forehand topspin shot played along the line and cross-cart, in order to induce a more pronounced torsional rotational movement on the pelvis during the execution. And I hope it was useful to improve the level, the technical level of the play. Then I started this research, this experiment, because from a practical perspective, this study would provide table tennis coaches with useful information to guide the selection of training exercises with the goal of producing specific torsional and rotational movement of the pelvis and shoulders. As you can see in these pictures, I involved 7 male advanced players. I use 8 high-speed cameras, a stereophotogrammetric system with the speed of 500 Hz. And I asked the players to play 10 topspin forehand in the forehand corner and 10 topspin forehand in the backhand corner. It means cross-cart and along the line. As you can see the pictures, the variables analyzed were angles, especially I evaluated the position of the feet with respect to the table, the position of the pelvis with respect to the table, the position of the shoulders in respect with the table, during the 2 different executions. You can see the table with all the results. It is a big table. We are not going to read all the numbers inside, but I can show you the animation because I underline in red all the significant results, the significant difference between the 2 different executions. And we can jump to result and conclusion because we found significant differences for lower and upper body angles. Other conclusions: coaches should consider that the 2 topspin executions require specific joint angles and torsions and specific position with respect to the table. In the end, results seem to indicate that the position of the feet with respect to the table may have a primary impact on the kinematics of both executions. I think that we are here today to try to combine theory and practice, and a practical suggestion would be to continue to plan training sessions including the 2 types of shots, and to keep the position of the feet fixed to possibly achieve a more pronounced torsional rotational movement of the pelvis and shoulders. I think that it is a very interesting suggestion for the coaches, but on the other hand, I think that it should be a problem if we would like to prevent injuries. What I mean that to keep the position of the feet fixed could be useful to improve the technique, but we have to take care because we can have problems about the knees, about the pelvis in order to prevent injuries. I can move to next step because the first part of the table tennis examples are linked with the injury prevention. The second part that we have just finished is linked with the performance improvement, and this part is connected with the application of biomechanics and kinematics to the analysis of the performance using different equipment. As you already know, International Table Tennis Federation included and approved new materials many years ago. What I mean that new plastic balls have been included in the list of the approved materials. And I presented this paper in 2017 at the European Congress of the European Society of Biomechanics. And the first aim was to investigate the effect of using the new plastic ball with respect to the celluloid one, comparing upper and lower body kinematics of forehand topspin. The main aim, in other words, was to try to understand if the use of a new ball, the plastic ball, changed the movement, changed the position during the shot. I analyzed the movement of 10 male advanced players using also 10 cameras at the frequency of 500 Hz. As you can see on the right side, there is the setup of the laboratory with a ball machine, a throwing machine at the other side. There is a target on the corner at the side of the player, and another target at the other side, in order to have a kind of standardization of the protocol. As you can see in this slide, there are a lot of information. On the left side, refer to the upper body. On the right side, refer to the lower limb. There are many variables. They are expressed in degrees. They are angles. Refer to girdle, shoulder, elbow, hip, knee, and ankle movement. And the red line in the middle of the graphics indicates the moment of the impact between the ball and the racket. This table shows in detail all the results. On the left side, in the first column, you can see the list of the variables. The red part of the table displays the data about the parameters considered about the celluloid ball, and the blue part of the table displays the result about the variables analyzed during the exercises playing with the plastic ball. On a statistical point of view, there are many results, but I have to show you that in the end, no differences were detected for the variables considered. Jumping to conclusions, we have evaluated the total body kinematics, and no differences for the upper limb joint kinematics, no differences for the lower limb joint kinematics, no differences for the athlete's table orientation and racket table orientation. The take-home message is that elite athletes do not modify the technical motor task execution, changing the two different. I have to be honest, I would like to be honest, because I think it is my opinion that these results are really influenced by the level of the players. They were really expert. They started to play many years ago, and they have always played with the old ball, the celluloid ball. I think that influences the result of this study, and it should be very interesting. It will be very interesting in the future to analyze a new generation of players, young players that they started to play directly with the new ball, the plastic, because I think that the results are influenced by the level of the players, that they have a kind of automatization of the shots. We change the ball, but they continue to play the same. It is the reason why it could be interesting in next future to compare a new generation of play, just to understand if there is a different technique, different angles, different acceleration, different velocity to prevent injuries and to improve the technique. I am moving very fast to the end of the webinar. I would show you last session of my presentation about news, because every week, every month, there are new articles about biomechanics. Today, I would show you 3 examples, 3 new entries. The first one is an article written by me and other colleagues of mine from China, and it is an analysis of one of the most important footwork technique in table tennis, the cross step. As I have already told you, the movement of the feet, the movement of the legs in table tennis, especially in applied biomechanics, are really underestimated. It is the reason why we would like to continue in this field. to study this kind of technique. As you can see in the picture, we divided the footwork technique in different phases. We compare 11 professional players and 11 beginners using an insole plantar pressure measurement system. Main results are linked with the professional athletes' characteristics. There is a very long list of variables, and professional athletes show smaller forefoot plantar flexion and abduction, larger hallux dorsiflexion at the end, larger forefoot dorsiflexion and abduction, and so on. In the end, the take-home message is very simple. It means that for the professional players, there is a higher footwork agility and greater foot motor technique. I think, in my opinion, that this study is very important because continuing the study of the lower limb movements, it could be useful to improve the technique and to design new shoes specific for our sport, for table tennis. We can move on to another example, a new entry, a new publication. I wrote this article with other colleagues of mine from Poland, and I have to thank the other authors. And it is a very hot topic in recent scientific research. Gender comparison is considered a very hot topic. And I think we have to work more to do something more in this field, gender comparison in table tennis. As you can see, the title is about this topic, gender differences in kinematic parameters of topspin forehand and backhand in table tennis. We compared the technique of 6 male and 6 female advanced table tennis players. We asked them to play topspin forehand and backhand, receiving a backspin ball. The main result shows that there are many significant differences about the variables considered. Comparing male and female athletes, the male athletes displayed more angular parameters and maximum hand acceleration. Male athletes showed large muscle groups and large joints. The maximum acceleration was higher for the male athletes compared to the women, and they reached almost 50 meters per square second in the forehand and 20 meters per square second in the backhand. In the conclusion, we can say that the results are really influenced by the anthropological differences, the anthropometrical difference between male and female athletes. And in the end, we would suggest that the results show that for women, we would suggest to women to use both the technique, because there is not a big difference between the variables considered for the backhand topspin and the forehand topspin. As you can imagine, there is a big difference in men, and we would like to say that men should seek opportunities to use that topspin forehand because it displays more power, more acceleration. It is more strong than the other shot. Finally, I would suggest to the audience this paper because it's free. It is possible to download it from internet. It is really new. It has been published at the end of July. It's from colleagues of mine from Hong Kong and other university. As you can see from the title, it is a review. The title is Biomechanics of Table Tennis, a systematic scoping review of playing levels and maneuvers. It is a collection of the most important articles about biomechanics. It is the reason why I would suggest this paper, because it is a summary of the most important papers. Then I can jump to conclusions in the end. First of all, I would repeat that there is a very limited number of studies about table tennis kinematics. It is a negative point of view because compared to other racket sport, it is a very small number on another point of view, it is a positive result because we can move on, we can plan new researches, new studies, and new experiments. I have to remember that all the studies are based on a laboratory setup, and we can ask the coaches, the players, and the international federation to allow us to plan data collection during the official ITTF tournament in order to have information more linked with the practice, more linked with the reality. There are many different methodological aspects, shots, different subjects, different instruments. In other words, kinematics is a very powerful tool. We can use it in a very different way, and I think that it is a very powerful instrument. Many times I receive criticism and critics from reviewers because the studies, one study about biomechanics does not seem compatible with interest of both researchers, biomechanical conceptual challenges, and coaches' practical application to training. Another frequent critic from blind reviewer is that the manuscript seems to be limited to biomechanical laboratory exercise to specially and temporally describe the participant movement. And I think that it is the key point, because sometimes there is a big distance between the field of practice and the field of theory, table tennis and science, table tennis and biomechanics. I am exactly in the middle because I am a table tennis coach and I am a table tennis researcher, a PhD in sports science. My take-home message at the end is about the cooperation between coaches and researchers. We need it, and I hope at the end of this webinar, the audience can provide me information, new ideas to move on in the field of biomechanics and table tennis. Thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation. I will thank you once again, the organizers, for inviting me to this webinar, and I will thank you, the audience, for the attention. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Ivan, for this great lecture, and also, showing us short reviews about the latest researches of biomechanics in table tennis. And now it's time for the Q&A part of the webinar, Ivan. So be prepared for interesting questions. And I would like to start with a question, with a prior webinar question of Francis Rimbong from Ghana. Ivan, what do you think? What vital kinematic factors should influence the coach's decisions on the best style of playing? So if he should be an attacker or a chopper, and also, the type of racket covering for a player. What do you think?
I think that we can try to use biomechanics in order to study different techniques, to better investigate different techniques. Because I can give you my opinion, but to be honest, I have to say that there are not a lot of studies about different style of play. I think that we can use force platforms in order to investigate the forces on the floor, to distinguishing physiological characteristics of the play, with more forces, with more speed, with more acceleration. I think I would suggest this type of players. Maybe it is better to direct this kind of players with the direction of attack style of play, and I think that players without the same level of power and quickness, we can try to direct this kind of players to defensive style of play. But it is just my opinion, because in the literature there are not investigations about it. And about the materials, I think that it could be very interesting, because in the next future we can try to analyze the main characteristic of the rubber. and then we can move on comparing the characteristic of the materials and the characteristic of the players together.
Thank you very much for your detailed answer and your personal opinion. And I would like to pass over to you, Max, for the next question.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say that very welcome more studies on table tennis. As Ivan said, there are not that many. And so this kind of limitation, of course, limits the knowledge of we coaches, let's say like that. So very welcome and congratulations to Ivan for the latest studies you have conducted along with your colleague from China and other parts of the world. Yes, I continue with one question from Andi Akbar, Indonesia, is from the table tennis Indonesia. How do you determine the angle to hit the topspin? I mean, when you have this kind of studies, you know, how you determine where the ball should be hit, whether in the upper side, in the middle. Can you tell us more about that?
Okay. First of all, I have to tell you that we used a stereophotogrammetric system, means that we put 8 cameras, high-speed frequency camera, all around the table, in order to detect a lot of frames during the motion. We put markers, retroflective markers on the bodies in order to determine the most important points on the body that we would like to analyze. Means that at the end of the movement, we can analyze the movement, connecting the points on the body. It is very difficult to detect the impact position, the impact moment of the ball on the racket, because the ball is very fast, as you already know. The movement of the racket is very fast, and it is not really easy to recognize the ball during the trajectory. It is a criticism in biomechanics, because with the cameras of 500 hertz, means that we can have 500 pictures in 1 second. But sometimes it is not enough to recognize good way the impact between the ball and the racket. Means that we have to focus our attention on the total body. We have to decide. It is a choice. We have to decide or the ball or the body. It means that it's not really easy. It's one of the aim of one of the perspective.
So you mean that the technology, of course, is important to better understand the facts behind the strokes and the movements and so on. So what is, I want to add, just out of curiosity, so you have 500 pictures in one second. So it requires also the knowledge of the researcher, the scientist, to detect, or you need a better software. I don't know. It's a matter to develop more technology around, or to give a better, let's say, knowledge to those who reading the results.
I think that on a technological point of view, the tools, the instruments are, I can say, perfect. We can use a lot of very high-level technologies. The problem is that we have to adapt the technologies to sports. As you can imagine, the most important cameras, they are not produced for table tennis. They are not produced for sports. The limitation is about the way we use the technologies. It is the reason why we need information. We need ideas from the field of practice, from coaches, to adapt the technologies to the practice.
Okay, so whenever I'm here to cooperate anyway. Dominic, I think you have next one for Ivan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Massimo. And Ivan, the next question is from Suban Asim, and he would like to know, why do most studies underestimate the lower body use, as you mentioned, in table tennis, while it is, in his opinion, the most important to come in line of the ball by your legs and footwork?
Thank you for the question. I totally agree with the participant, because as a table tennis coach, I know that there are two main technical aspects in our sport. Footwork technique, the movement in order to move the body in the direction of the ball. Then there is the other technical aspect, the shot. My answer is really simple, because I have to tell that the most important authors in the field of biomechanics and table tennis, they are from the field of biomechanics. Means they prefer to apply the technologies, the methodology to the most simple technical aspect. I agree with the participant, and I would say that it is the reason why I am moving step by step to the field of footwork technique and lower limb and lower body, because I think that it is very important. It is one of the most important part of our sport. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ivan. And there is an additional question from Suban Asim. He would like to know, after the ball changed to plastic material, how much is the body angle, or how much did the body angle change due to the base and bounce change of the ball? What is your opinion?
As I already told you, I have to tell you my opinion, because there are not studies about it. I started many years ago, and I have showed a paper that I presented in one congress about biomechanics. I think that it is important to study the new technique, to have the opportunity to involve new athletes that they started, a young generation, a new generation, that they started to play directly with the new ball. Then I think that we can have big surprises. But nowadays, today, I just can give you my opinion. It is not referred with literature. I think that table tennis is changing a lot. New plastic ball changed. I think not the duration of the rallies, but the characteristic of the shot. Longer movement, very fast, involving total body, shoulders, pelvis, the upper body, and the arm, and the speed of changing the speed of the racket. But it is just my opinion, and I would start new experiments about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
This would be very interesting, and hopefully you do so. So thank you very much, Ivan, and pass over to you, Max, for the next question.
Well, next question, Ivan, is more from my side. I mean, judging the presentation and other question came. We know that the performance of the players is not based on the repetitive actions, while the biomechanics studies taking in consideration repetitive actions, and so most likely the expected ball. You know, when you showed the ball machine sending the ball in the corner, and you have to hit the ball cross court or maybe down the line. My interest is in between. So when you don't perform actually the stroke. So what is the actual studies on this? You know, when there is the transition from backhand and forehand, expected or unexpected, and this is the key, I mean, for many mistakes from the players, you know. So we are going to the performance, I understand, but where is the connection? How the biomechanics can help, you know, to solve? Because when you have to repeat, the performance is always good. It's actually very, very good. but when it's unexpected, the performance dropped dramatically. That is the gap.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? How can the biomechanics come to help us?
Thank you for your question. Very interesting question. It's not really easy to answer, I have to be honest. I think that biomechanics is one tool. We can use it just to have information, to have a main picture, the main picture of the moment. I don't think that it is the final result, but it is just a tool in order to improve our knowledge, to create a model, a main pictures. I think that we can try to use in a different way, combining other sports science fields. How can I say, eyes movement, about physiology, about using many different tests, psychological tests. We can try to combine different aspects in order to answer to your question. I think that if I would like to apply immediately biomechanics to your question, we can try to create two different protocols. A closed skill protocol in the field, in the laboratory. What I mean is that we can try to study the technique of the execution of the shots in a closed skill situation, when you know when and where the ball arrives. On the other hand, we can try to create another protocol called open skill situation, when you don't know where the ball arrives. And then we can try to compare the two situations. What I would like to tell you in the end that it is not the best solution, but it is just an additional information. Thank you.
Well, yes, that's thank you. I mean, because it's when you see the speed of the action, the racket, the shoulder, the old part of the body, where you know actually that the ball is coming with a certain speed, and I know that we have to standardize, and then it's important to have some objective results. But then when we come to the key of the questions, so the performance, the speed, and everything can be compromised. So I agree with you. We need to make let's say cross-unit cooperation in order to bring more knowledge to the understanding of table tennis, which is very, very complicated. Pass to you, Dominic. I don't know what we are already 1 hour and 10. Yes, back to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Yeah, we are very close to the end. One more question from my side, and then the last one from Massimo, and then we will go to conclude this webinar. So, Ivan, personal question from my side. I would like to know to get to know your opinion. How much worth would you give the anthropometric biomechanics when thinking about identification of talents related to table tennis?
I think I'm not expert in anthropometric measurements, but I know that there are many articles about it, and I'm not sure about it. I have to check it in my mind. I'm pretty sure that in the literature, no significant differences were detected about anthropometric measurements in table tennis. Means that there are many players with different characteristics, anthropometrical characteristics, and they are not really connected with the ranking and the classification and the results. It is the same reason, the reason why I have answered in this way to Massimo questions, because table tennis is very complicated. There are many variables. As you already know, it is an open skill, a situational sport. It means there are many variables. It's not really easy to combine everything. We need to create a puzzle, many different aspects, to try to collect everything.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Thank you for your straight and clear answer. And now, pass back to you, Massimo, for the last question.
Yeah, well, again, maybe we talk around the same aspect, which many our attendees expecting that. My question again goes a little bit, but I hope this can be easier to answer. How the grip of the racket, you know, and so all the transmission, the tense of the muscles. Can let's say affect the performance of the biomechanically. So whether it's a very strong grip, tight, or soft, medium. Can you tell anything about that, or maybe if there is any studies on this?
Yeah, I can tell you that I'm pretty sure that there is a very interesting article about the hand grip. It is a special instrument to evaluate the force of the hand during special exercises. It is called hand grip. And I remember that table tennis athletes showed a very high force. They are very strong because they used to play with a racket, with a very small grip. And I remember that compared with other sports in general, team sport, individual sport, and compared to racket sports, tennis, badminton, and squash, table tennis players showed a very strong grip in the hand used to hold the racket. I don't remember, but I think there are not studies about the power of the hand during the game. I think that it could be very interesting. I think that it is a very personal characteristic, and on the other hand, I think that it is very difficult to evaluate these kind of variables because you need to ask the players to use this kind of tools during the game. And as you can imagine, it's not really easy to ask players to use tools or instruments during a real game, a real competition. But it could be interesting.
Okay, great, Ivan. Thank you very much. I think we can wrap up our webinar. So back to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Yeah, and now all of us are aware that the use of the biomechanics could be improved in table tennis. As Ivan mentioned, there are just 57 studies at the moment. But on the other side, this limited number is a great opportunity and chance for the sport science and table tennis to work on new researches. The highest emphasis is put on the upper body, as Ivan mentioned, and the most analyzed shot, the topspin, although we shouldn't neglect the other shots. Ivan thinks that the analysis of the lower body, so the footwork, is still very much neglected, and it's for him very important, in his opinion, to use robot machines to have standardized conditions, and also furthermore to the need of a high-speed camera is very high. So Ivan, the entire HPD team wants to thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, experience, the review of the research results, your thoughts, opinions, and of course your expertise, and for giving us so many interesting insights into the biomechanics in table tennis. So grazie mille, Ivan.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
And I want to thank all of you for your interest and attendance. And I'm looking forward to our next webinar, which will be held on Wednesday, the 16th September at 2 p.m. Central European Summertime. We will have a great guest who was a very successful player and still is very successful as a coach, as the German national team head coach of the men's team. It's the former men's doubles European and world champion, World Cup winner and Olympic medal winner in singles and doubles, Jörg Rosskopf. And he will talk about topics related to coaching. But before passing to you, Max, for the closing words, our team has already been running this webinar series since May. At this place, I would like to thank sincerely the entire HPD team, our director Polona Chehovin, Dora Jela, Katarzyna Kubasz, and Ramon Ortega Montes for the great effort all of them are putting into the project of our webinars. And I am very happy and proud to be part of this great team. And that's all from my side for today. Pass over to you, Max, and I kindly ask you for the closing words.
Yeah, thank you. So it was another great webinar, bringing you more knowledge, and we will continue to do the same. Today we have received one strong invitation from Ivan to have a better connection between coaches and researchers. I'm there. I'm ready anytime to help the knowledge of table tennis and to improve the table tennis knowledge. So it was great. Thank you very much again, Ivan. Thank you, Dominic. Please don't miss next webinar with Jörg Rosskopf, and would be a great opportunity for all of us to hear from his vast experience and the coaching, Timo Boll, Dima Ovcharov, and so many other champions, being also IM champions. So it would be a great opportunity. So see you next Wednesday. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.
And ciao.
Thanks to everyone here, and see you next Wednesday. Bye.